Welcome to the podcast, everyone. Today, I am joined by a guest who recently shared a really powerful post on LinkedIn about the emotional impact of working in digital forensics. We're going to explore that experience and that post in depth today. Please introduce yourself to the viewers and tell us who you are and all about Sena Forensics.
Oh, thank you, Paul. So, my name is Bunmi Bloom. I'm the co founder of Sena Forensics, and I have set up this company to basically help digital forensics labs, units, individuals, whether it's private or law enforcement, get on board of their quality management system. So, what that involves is the SOP preparation and development. So, those technical documents that you've got specialists that just don't have time for, and they're so busy with their team or other priorities, trying to manage deadlines. We come in and we go, look, what do you want this SOP to look like? What does it need to have in? And then where I've got the ISO 17025 awareness and understanding, I can interpret that and make sure it's compliant. And it just helps people get through accreditation a lot quicker. I think a lot of the time people don't want to write these SOPs because they don't have the time. So we come in, we're enthusiastic, we understand how the tools work, and we can get things done in days that might take weeks or months. So that's what we're here for: create a quality management system, have a look if there's any gaps where things could be improved, and then we go from there.
Perfect. And of course, you say when you talk about people internally writing it, quite often they are DFIs working in a lab
Yeah,
who are, shall we say, selected
yeah,
to write these stops and
yeah.
don't necessarily want to do them.
Yeah, exactly. And they're selected, but they thought, oh, I didn't sign up for this. Where's all the techie fun bit? I want to get on and connect this to that. I want to find out what this tool does. I want to get on speaking with the vendors and expanding the team and our capabilities and work out why we've got so many limitations, etc. But yeah, that's where we come in and go, look, this bit is very important. Everybody wants to or has to at some point get accredited. So it's just a case of us helping you guys get there quicker. So, but yeah, selected is the right way. It's more like this is your job from now on. Have fun.
Yeah, exactly. Because many people who are, shall we say, selected,
Mm,
don't actually want to sit there for
no.
hours and hours and write these
Yeah.
SOPs. So your company actually provides that service.
Yeah, exactly. So we come in and we want to do it because we know how to do it, and it's just a case of us sitting down, having these meetings. But we try and get the most out of these meetings. And I know everyone hates meetings, but we try and make them as quick, as painless as possible. So that's where we do a lot of the writing, and then go, look, what's your stance on this? And we just rather ping you a quick message and just get things done quicker. So we try not to waste too much time, and I don't like to say it's a waste of time, but we try not to take up too much time of people wanting to do more hands-on work, and we take that burden away from those organizations. And it's policies, we try and help with validation, internal audits and validation plans. That's another tricky area. We just kind of give some guidance and see where you're at and see where we can come in and improve it.
Perfect. Great. Prior to Center Forensics,
Yes.
where did you work?
So I've got experience with working with the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority. I was a quality management specialist there. And then prior to that, I was working with the Metropolitan Police for 17 years. I started off as a 999 call handler in a control room. That was, yeah, had some difficult times there, lots of unsociable hours and difficult calls to handle. And then I moved on to coaching, new call takers, and dispatch. And then I left there 2018 to work as a digital forensic assistant. And I kind of worked my way up from there. I started off as just doing mobile phone extractions and not analyzing the data. And it was purely mobile phones. It was getting the binary read off the phones and
Mhm.
then shipping them off or basically sending them to a technician. And then I got promoted to a technician. So we started looking at computers, using a whole range of tools from Axiom, Automate, Cellbrite, and all of the tools you can think of. Yeah, all of those working on obviously really serious CSAM cases and serious crimes, murder, sexual assault, all of those. And we only dealt with the most serious crimes in the Met because there was just so much phones coming in and so many investigators and officers needing phones downloaded. We can only focus on the most serious crimes, but then obviously you're focusing on the most serious crimes, you end up getting the most serious evidence, don't you? So
Yeah.
That's when you see the more serious things that, some people only dream of. So, yeah, you get exposure to a lot of things. And yeah, that's my history. And I think with all of that, it's, yeah, made me who I am today. And I think now I can use my skills to help other people with whatever's needed, really.
And obviously, you caught my attention by the post that you put out on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
which really resonated with me. And I know if other DFIs out there had read it, it would have resonated with them. And I really wanted to talk to you about the post that you put out there. So can we begin by just asking what led you to write that post, and why did you feel now was the right moment to share those experiences?
Yeah, I think it's a case of it's like a lot of things really. Whenever you kind of face a difficult time, it does can take some time. And when you're removed from that situation, sometimes it feels easier to talk about. I guess when you're no longer having to, face that on a day to day basis, and time's passed, and it feels like the right time. But generally, I think my posts are more for me to reflect on some challenging times and to share that with people, because these are things that, when I went into the job, some of them I knew about, some of them I couldn't kind of picture or didn't know they'd be this challenging. And it was just, I think that platform on LinkedIn gives me that chance to go, okay, I found this challenging. Surely there's other people that can relate. And I just thought back on the times that were a little bit difficult in the job, or the times that I did speak to my colleagues, or the same issues that kept coming up. And I thought, this would be a nice, almost like a community to say, okay, this is what's happening in digital forensics. Are we all going through it? Is anyone talking about it? Because these are just casual chats that you have, after your lunch break. And then, you don't think anything of it. You just have a little moan and groan or a laugh or whatever it is. And then you don't think of it as a big problem. So it was a chance for me to kind of almost get that feedback from people. And from that post, a lot of people have reached out to me and said, I'm so glad you brought this up. It's a really a topic that everyone should be thinking about, and people don't talk about it enough. And they was really happy that I brought it up, and I'm glad that I decided to write the post. And it wasn't even to get everyone's attention; it was just purely me, kind of like I said, reflecting back on some more challenging times of my career, really.
On your experiences of working as a DFI?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So my experience of working as a DFI was very much a big career change for me. Obviously, I was in policing, but I think someone even mentioned it in the comments. Actually, my experience was both hearing things, when I'm taking 999 calls, and sometimes I think, oh gosh, what's worse, hearing, traumatic calls or distressing calls, or seeing disturbing images and videos. It's just, you're getting it from all senses, aren't you? You're hearing stuff, and then like I'm looking at, these images as well. So I just thought, now's the time to speak about it. And I think even people not in digital forensics have maybe a preconception of what happens in somebody's mind. And I'm sure you've heard it as well, like, oh God, how do you deal with that? And
Yeah.
I don't even know what the answer is. I just go, I don't know what I say. I just go, I just do, or something like that. I just give a quick answer. I don't break it down, and it doesn't need to be broken down if people don't feel like they want to talk about it. But for me, I thought there is different stages that I've been through and how I've dealt with everything. I remember feeling nervous when I, first joined, about how it's going to affect me. And now maybe I've got to that stage where I don't have that strong feeling, and I'm a bit desensitized because I've got to get on with my job. I might be at that stage now, but it's definitely a strange cycle or development of emotions that happen. They start off heightened and worried, and now they're just a bit, yeah, this is it now. This is what I do, and I don't overthink it, or it's just maybe I've just got used to it. I'm not sure.
It's really interesting something that you said there when you mentioned it's the things you see, it's the things you hear in that
Mm,
role. From the material that you're exposed to, it's also the things you read.
yeah.
Would you agree it's quite a sensory overload when you are sort of exposed to that seriousness of the serious side of humanity?
Yeah, I mean, if I think about the submission documents when, an officer or detective is submitting a case, and then they choose the level of information, I think they choose the level of information they want to go into. And some of them are so detailed, and it's like it's almost I don't know if it's worse because you're trying to picture it, and then I think naturally the human mind thinks of the worst case scenario in that situation. So
Hmm.
obviously the report is detailing what has been seen or what has happened. So you're there trying to imagine it, and sometimes your imagination is it could be worse, like you said, sensory overload. So you know what's worse, you're hearing trauma, seeing it, and then you're reading it, but then reading it leads to imagining it, and then your imagination can run wild. So there's a
Yeah,
lot going on.
precisely.
There's a lot going on, and this is why sometimes in the lab or the office, I think it's so important that there's not distractions, but something that keeps everyone together. You know, and I think that's really hard for loads of reasons. Whether you're how tight your team is, you know, the support you get from management, but if you're just reading that day after day after that, I just think I was lucky. I could read something and I'd be like, oh God, and then I'll close it and I go, what's for lunch, everyone? You know, and I just that was me just kind of going, okay, that was a lot there. And but I don't know if everyone's doing that. Sometimes I see people and they're staring, and I feel like I start to notice people like overly like focused on what they're reading. And I try sometimes in the past I've gone, oh, are you okay? Or because you start to see how you was with when you was like finding it hard, and then somebody might come into the team, and then you kind of notice it. I don't know about you, but I definitely notice when people are a bit shocked that it's just the normal body language, shaking their heads, going, oh my God, or that kind of thing. And I'll go, oh, what happened? Even if at that moment I'm not trying to find the exact details, but I don't like the thought of that colleague keeping it within them. Does that make sense?
I think what you've just described there, I
Mm,
think you've just described the act of social support really beautifully,
mm, mm.
because there is a lot of research out there which suggests the more social support a DFI is given,
Yeah,
then it doesn't take away the stresses that they can become vulnerable to, but it can absolutely lessen the impact.
yeah, yeah,
And I think what you've just described there, by noticing a colleague
yeah.
who maybe sat there focused on something
Mm,
horrendous and
mm,
shaking their head,
mm,
the fact that you realised that
yeah,
and approached them and said,
mm,
"Are you okay?"
yeah, yeah.
is wholly, wholly important.
Yeah, yeah, I do, because I think to me the shaking of the head, it's just because they're not tearful. I don't think naturally people pay much attention because it's just a normal reaction. But I know that me shaking my head could mean, am I going to think about it on the way home? Am I going to have a chance to talk to anybody on the way home? You just don't know how that's going to play out in their mind. So I just think let me act on the moment and just go, are you okay? And then it leads to a conversation. And for me, because I know when I was, reading things that were difficult or looking at something, and I would start talking about it, and everyone would go, "Oh, I saw that as well," or "My case had something similar." And before you know, we're having a 5-10 minute conversation about it. Honestly, it's such a strange relief. I can't explain it any other way. Just because I think that's the good thing about having colleagues doing a similar job around you. This is the only place where you feel you can discuss it, because when you go home you can't give that kind of detail. So you're surrounded by people that are doing it next to you, with you, and they can understand where you're coming from. So it's just encouraging people to take that moment. And like I said, I know it's difficult. It depends on what team you're in, and also if you're new in the job, there's lots of factors. But I was quite lucky. I built up quite a good kind of bond with my team. And so when I wanted to say something out loud, I'd be like, "Can you believe this? Can you believe what I'm just reading here?" And then like, I think everyone was like a mini detective, and they go, "Sorry, he did what? Or she did what? And that was
But that
great.
sparks
And
the
yeah,
conversation, doesn't it?
yeah, it really
It
does.
sparks the conversation between what's just shocked the life out of you
Yeah,
with another colleague, and then you sat there talking about it, and that helps
100%.
remove some of that stress and
Yeah,
strain, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It definitely does. And I think if it wasn't for that, and I think back maybe when in the early years of my career, I wasn't able to talk to as many people as I could towards the end, to be honest with you. But it's not to say that I don't know if that would have helped or made any difference, but I think it was just something that I was very worried about, and then over time it became just something that I naturally dealt with by talking. But I don't know how everyone else has dealt with it or whether they're desensitized that they don't need to talk about it. So this is just my personal experience. Do you see what I mean?
I think I quite often believe this hasn't been tested as far as I know, but I quite often think to myself, do you get to a certain point working as a DFI
Mm,
where you've been exposed to so much
yeah,
of the darker side of humanity
yeah,
that you do quite simply become desensitized
mm, mm,
to a degree.
yeah.
It almost becomes not quite the norm, but what you see and do every day.
Yeah, I do think that. And then I think to myself, what about when we see it outside of work? You know, I don't know about you, but sometimes, especially if you're around like family and they see things on the news, and the news like, is just the key place where you see like traumatic conversation, at least, or something terrible that's happened. And then that's when I feel, I wouldn't say human, but I do respond in a different way to when I'm at work. I don't know why. I think it might be I'm outside of work and I'm around, people that it's equally as shocking, or maybe it could be in, not far from where I live. So that kind of thing, it has an impact if you feel like, oh my God, it could affect me. But then I don't know, when I'm at work, it's almost like you go into a mode where I wouldn't say it's not real, but you kind of, you're doing a job and you
Yeah,
don't overthink, you don't overthink the, I don't know, the effects it might have on your family and things like that, because it's a case. And
yeah,
that's when it comes to being desensitized. You look at it just as a case, even though it's more real than maybe anything the media's reported, because it's live, it's on someone's device, isn't it? But
it
I
is.
still think of it as very, this is a case and not an actual, I wouldn't say a crime that's taken place, but it's part of being desensitized. You just look at the case in a different way.
Hi, folks. This is not a glitch. Do not adjust your sets. I am butting in to your regular viewing to remind you to complete the DFI Mental Health and Wellbeing Survey. This is your chance to have your voice heard and to add to the evidence base so we can continue to campaign for the support DFIs should be receiving but aren't. Please, please click the link below and complete the survey. Now back to your regular program.
Mm.
It's, I suppose, from a psychological point of view,
Yeah.
you detach yourself
Yeah.
from the
Exactly. Yeah.
actual acts and material that you're observing
Mm-hmm.
as a way of protection.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be that. It could be, and it's not even something that I know is happening. It's just my mind drifts when I'm kind of working. Do you see what I mean? I'm not actually focused, thinking, don't take it serious. I'm just kind of going through the motions. Like, oh, I'm looking for, I don't know, I'm really focused on whatever's in the scope, or,
Yeah.
a certain picture I'm looking for. I'm just very focused on that. So the other ones, I'm like, no, I'm focused on what's in the scope, in the strategy, what am I looking for? I just really just like, just try and hone in on what I want. And that's it. Yeah, I think.
Bef- Before you went into the job, did you have any understanding of what the emotional impact of the job would be?
I wouldn't say I didn't have. I had some understanding, and the understanding, and it wasn't so much about emotions. It was definitely more focused on what you're going to see. So you will see disturbing visuals, images, moving images, still images, and that's kind of as far as it went. And that was, said at the recruitment stage. It was said in the interview, and that sentence alone was as much of that's what I knew. That's I wasn't aware of anything else. And when you say aware, it's almost like if you ask anybody, how would you feel if you saw a disturbing image? They're gonna answer how they think they would feel. So I think you can only imagine how you're gonna feel. There's not like, I don't even know if there's a like a checkbox or a list or saying you might feel this or you might feel that. Or I'm not saying that would have helped, but it might have made me think, oh, okay, I didn't realize that, this is going to stay with me for life. This image I can't unsee. Or I didn't realize that it might make me feel tearful. Or, they don't go into detail, but
Hmm.
is it should it be done at the early stages of a career? I don't know. And also there's a lot of people that would go, oh, I'll be fine. Like everyone says that. Like I'm sure most people say that if they're trying to go for a job, and they go, okay, you might feel this emotion, you might feel that. Doesn't matter how many you list. Most people that want that job will go, I'll be fine with that. That's the problem. It's just, you're in a state where you're trying to get into an industry that you've wanted maybe for a long time. So even if you knew, I don't know, I wonder what it would change.
Do you think there's any? I know I have my own personal views on this,
Hmm.
but do you think there's anything that could have helped you feel or be more prepared for that role, or do you think it's simply impossible for that type of work?
I don't know about prepare. I think it would have been the only thing that could have maybe been different is if, like, I can only compare it to, like, when you're pregnant and you get something called a spot assigned to you, and they kind of walk you through what's going to happen with your maternity, and you can reach out to them anytime, and you get an email from them, and they have little chats here and there. And the thing is, I know that support's really full on, and I can't imagine all law enforcement agencies or companies being able to provide that. And also, support is very one on one, which takes a lot
Yeah.
of time away from that individual to go through every single new recruit. I just, obviously, I can't imagine how that would work, and that's why people end up in these situations where the management have to almost, do it on a mass basis or some kind of group conversation where there might be 50 to 100 people all in a room, and that's when it's discussed. But one on one could have helped, but I'm understanding that the resources, and that's just a massive high expectation. But I just think if it was like, oh, I'm worried, and then maybe someone was like, okay, don't worry, it's normal to feel like this. That's the thing. I didn't know it's normal to feel, to wonder how it's going to feel, if that makes sense. It's just, I think about when I was so concerned about how I'm going to feel, and it would have been nice to be able to kind of have someone go, trust me, we've all felt like that. Just, and then speak
Mm.
to people that have been like, oh no, let's, in the same session, oh, I was like that, and this is how I felt. But yeah, I don't know how that would come. Maybe in training, I guess maybe someone, an external could have came in or something like that. Probably training whilst you're learning about the very technical side. There could have been the psychological talk as well.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah, I agree. I don't think there's enough preparation put in before DFIs are actually put in front of the screen and exposed to, uh, let's say, difficult material.
I don't know what your thoughts are. I'm trying to imagine like what could help. Do you mean in terms of training as well?
Absolutely, in terms of training, yeah.
Mm,
I mean, at present, I'm not aware of any training courses out there which are specifically designed at talking about the psychological stresses which DFIs can become susceptible to,
mm,
which would help them prepare
mm,
for the work that they're about to undertake.
mm,
But also, it would help them recognise those stresses in colleagues, as you have already touched on
mm,
tonight.
mm.
Because if you don't know what the stresses look like,
Yeah,
how do you recognise them, and how do you get help for the
yeah,
people around you as well?
yeah, exactly. Because not everybody shows trauma or the kind of impact by crying. I think most people think, oh, mental health tears, and it doesn't look like, it might not look like that. It doesn't.
No,
I can't imagine
no,
it being the normal way of looking. Sometimes it's literally just a conversation, and then finally it's been in their minds, and then for whatever reason they've decided to speak about it. Like they might just turn after, like I said, having lunch, or talking about their kids' Christmas play, and then they might speak about it, and then that might be the moment that your whatever you say can have a big impact. So it's time to, put the mouse down and turn and speak. And it's really hard. Like I think in forensics, you're sometimes so zoned in on whatever you're doing, especially if it's analysis or you're looking for a specific image or message. It's hard for your colleagues to know that this is the moment. And I think that's the problem in digital forensics, really. When do you kind of go, okay, this is a moment, let me stop what I'm doing? Because people, no one turns and go, hi everyone, I'm having a mental health crisis, can I talk to you please? It's never introduced like that, is it?
if only it was that easy to
Yeah,
spot.
exactly.
You know,
Exactly. And I think it's because I got to know my colleagues, and I'm not saying that there was, mental health issues or crisis. It could have just been them having a conversation, and it could have just been like a natural thing that they did and turned around. But like I said, I'm going by my experiences. And when something was so unbelievable, my first instinct was to say it out loud. It reminds me of that saying, a problem shares, a problem halves. It's like
Is a problem halved? Yeah.
trauma shared is trauma reduced, or something like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said a problem shared is a problem halved.
Yeah.
And again, social support comes out as one of the top coping strategies
Mm,
within the research that's being carried out in this area.
yeah.
So, what do you think? Simply talking through incidents, what do you? How do you think that made a difference to yourself and the colleagues?
I think it helps you to, I would say, do your job properly or do your job better, because if you're if you know you have that support around you and you hit a difficult moment, you're not feeling like, okay, I can't say this, I'm going to be judged. Um, no one speaks about this kind of thing, so I don't want to look, like I'm not handling it. This is what I signed up for. I shouldn't, they might feel like they can't speak about it. All those thoughts that probably go through, a DFI's mind when they're thinking, shall I say something? It should be a case of just feeling like comfortable with saying a thought, a passing thought. And it doesn't have to be, oh my God, I need an hour of your time. It's just saying out loud what you've seen, if that's okay. Sometimes people say, oh, do you mind if I show you something? Or and you'd be like, if that was the moment, someone would be like, yeah, sure. Someone say, oh, do you know, I've just had my dinner. Not right now. I've just had my lunch or whatever. But just having that it just helped me be able to work better, because I knew I had someone to talk to, and it was like, okay, I can go into the next case now. And sometimes you probably know it's like, it's case after case, isn't it? You can't select. It's like, it's based on urgency, it's based on priority, and things like that. So you can't go, okay, I want a break from CSAM this week. I can't do it anymore. And but then at the same time, I feel like if I wanted did have that strong feeling, I'd be able to talk to my line manager about it without feeling like, okay, why is she saying this? This is what she signed up for. And I think that's another thing as well, having supportive management. If you're having a difficult time and you say, look, I want a break from indecent images of children, can you put me on another case? And for people to feel comfortable with that, and
Yeah,
no,
for people to
you
feel
know
strong enough to do that.
yeah, I think if I knew that, it would have helped as well, because these are little things that I might again thought of in my early years. If it's too much for me, who can I tell? I can't stop halfway through. Can anyone take over? That kind of thing. And there's no one tells you that you can do that. And I'm sure it's just about knowing that it's an option, not to abuse it and say you'll never do it, because obviously you know what you signed up for. But if you do have that, just kind of have some way of somebody helping you back in, whether that's sending you for some kind of therapy internally or on a course, or there doesn't seem to be any way of feeling comfortable to say something without it detrimenting your career in the job, you know?
I think I mean, you touched on so much in that. In
I was thinking out loud here, yeah.
No, it was great. You touched on so much
Yeah.
there.
Mm,
You mentioned in your post on LinkedIn,
mm,
the unwritten expectation to stay strong and just get on with it.
mm.
How did that kind of culture affect your willingness to be open about what you were experiencing at the time?
Well, I think I found it difficult because I was quite and I still am, an empathetic person, even though I've seen a lot of things and heard a lot of things. And I think when you come in to a job where a lot of people are, quite serious, this is, they've got deadlines, and there really doesn't feel like that kind of time to talk and show emotion in the job. And when you're somebody that's like quite the opposite to that. And like I said, I remember actually turning to people going, "Oh, how do you go?" I remember going around going, "How do you cope with it? What do you do when you see it?" And I was trying to get an answer because I was thinking, "Oh, maybe this will help me," kind of thing. And
Mhm.
I didn't really get any responses that was something that would help, and it was just like, I just do, and that's what I mean. It's very like, this is a uncomfortable conversation, let me just move on and hope she doesn't carry on asking asking me anymore. And that's kind of what I've got. And I think it's moved on now, and this was a long time ago. And I hope that just generally, labs, hubs and teams have kind of moved into a place where people can feel comfortable to talk. But I definitely felt the odd one out. Let's put it that way. And like I said, whereas mental health is spoke about more, it was only 8 years ago I started. So I think back then it wasn't as prevalent on the TV and the media as it is now, and
Yeah.
it was a little bit of an embarrassing topic. But I was kind of very aware of my well-being and mental health outside of work, so it was just natural for me to come in to the workplace and go, oh, well, how did that make you feel? It's just, I don't know about you, but if you know some people that have been through things and they end up kind of analyzing things in a different way, and I like to ask people how that made them feel and things like that. And it's like, if you're not naturally comfortable with talking about it, and especially in our line of work, it's there was no space for that. There was no need for it. Why is this person talking? It felt a little bit like that. Let's just crack on. Let's get plugging in. Let's get extracting, downloading. Why is she asking how I'm coping? I just get on with it. So yeah, it was tricky at heart, but like I said, I think times have changed, and that's really helped people be a bit more open about it. I'd like to think, like I said, I can only talk about my experience, but I'm hoping it's a bit more of an open conversation in other workplaces as well.
I think you're right. I think, it is a generational thing
Yeah.
because I watched the younger DFIs coming in over the last few years of my service. And I tended to find that the younger DFIs coming in fresh from university were way more open about talking about how they actually felt.
Mm.
Now, to us old dinosaurs, it was like, what on earth is this?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, I think that generational change will open the conversation up
Oh,
more
yeah.
as time goes on, or
Yeah.
I hope it does.
Yeah. 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 Definitely.
One of the other things that you raised in your post was the idea of psychological screening as part of the
Mm.
recruitment process.
Mm.
What do you think that might look like?
That's a difficult one, because I kind of read it back and I thought to myself, it could eliminate some good potential candidates for the role, because at that stage in their career and they haven't done it before, how do they know they're going to be good at it? How do they
Mm.
know they're going to be emotionally strong? Like, what does a test look like that tests your emotional strength to seeing trauma? And I can only imagine these like really crazy psychological tests where they sit you down and you got wires connected and you're seeing you probably seen them late at night on BBC Two, and they're just like doing all these crazy experiments. I don't know what that looks like. That's when I wrote it, I was thinking that is quite wild. I don't actually know. I don't know how you can really test that without somebody being freaked out and not even want to apply for the job. It's just, it might put them off completely. So I'm not really sure how that would look. But I think when I wrote it, I was just thinking of the people that may have gone through something that they've maybe kind of kept inside, and then they see some indecent images, and it might bring some trauma back, or not even related to something happened to them personally. It could just be something that they haven't quite dealt with. And I think, again, I'm not a psychologist, but it may have a negative impact on their mental health further, or how they carry out the job. It could lead to their own personal crisis. But who knows? I'm not in a position to say how to score or mark that, and I don't think any job, I can't imagine they ask you, have you gone through something terrible in your life, and you go yes or no. It's going to be like a 99% no, isn't it? Or
Yeah,
and that's the problem. Is there any point in trying to create a screening test when it's reliant upon people being honest at the same
mm,
time? And it's not anonymous, because they're trying to get a job, so you can't even make it anonymous. So they know that information's got their name all over it. And when you're in digital forensics, you're like, where's that going? That's not being deleted. My name's attached to it. So
where's it being held?
where's it being held? When's it going to creep back up on me? And you're going to, send me for a psych test every year? Is it just going to be me? Is anyone else in my team wrote yes on that form? All these things are going to just turn people away. And it would really be a struggle to work out what that looks like. I'm just trying to think of careers where maybe it's used at all, Paul. I don't know if you know, but I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, I completely agree with what you wrote in your post, actually. I think psychological screening and psychological interviewing should be included within the interview process right at the start to properly assess that individual is fit for the role. And that isn't just, or shouldn't just consist of psychological screeners. So, for example,
Yeah.
the GAD 7 or the PHQ 9. But it should be a full-on assessment by a qualified psychologist
mm, mm,
who can decide whether that person is fit for the role before they enter.
mm,
But by doing that, also you set the baseline. This is purely my own opinion. By doing that, also you set the baseline so you understand at what level that person's scoring in the assessment and on the screeners.
yeah,
So if later on down the road, say in 6 months, 12 months, they're retested and there's an increase,
mm,
the psychological professional psychologist can explore that with the individual and identify if that increase is significant, and if it is, they can tackle it at the earliest possible opportunity.
yeah.
But sadly, I'm not aware of any force in the country that is actually doing that right now. Not at the interview stage.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard of it at the interview stage. The only thing I was going to say was with those tests, I think if you was to introduce that into, I don't know how it's happened in other forces, but if you introduce that, there's still that fear of how's that information going to be used? Is it going to affect promotion opportunities? What's your relationship with your line manager like? Are they going to kind of go, oh, yeah, I thought so, that kind of thing? It's all these kind of the taboo that's attached to kind of identifying that you might need some more support. That's why I always wonder, is it going to capture the right people that probably need that support? Are they going to be the ones that are filling it in honestly and correctly? It's hard to tell, isn't it?
I think again you just
Mm,
touched on another really good subject
yeah.
where there is tons and tons of research which have identified this, and that's the stigma around
Mm,
help seeking.
yeah. Yeah.
The way you've just talked about the worry that
Yeah.
DFIs have,
Yeah.
whether this will impact on the future
Mm,
on promotion
mm,
possibilities,
yeah.
and that is still why a lot of DFIs
Mm,
don't seek the help and
mm,
do actually become
mm,
affected by the stresses.
mm,
So I think you just hit the nail on the head
mm.
beautifully there.
Yeah, I think it's that as well. But then I know that there's a lot of DFIs that are quite happy in their position and they're not applying for a promotion. And I think it's about sometimes when they're in that position, they're almost like, I just want to sit quietly in the corner and get on with my job. So
Yeah,
if I fill in this and it reveals something, that's going to bring attention to me, which might mean a meeting, which might mean I have to go off to another site, or I'm just very comfortable right now. I don't want anyone to ask me why I wrote that. So I just think, how can it work? You've got people worried about promotion. You've got those that don't want to be disturbed and be pulled into meeting rooms. And, there's also just email back and forth with, the psychological team. And you must now fill in. Now you've raised some kind of concerns for us. Now there's another one, and to be honest, I've seen some language behind these, and they are very, oh goodness me, that's quite concerning, that kind of thing. And they're not like, hi, thanks for reaching out. They're not that friendly tone how I would have imagined. So when I've seen them and they've been quite like, right, you have hit level so and so, so we are going to need to go on to the next stage. It's almost disciplinary style language.
it is. It is.
I
I
don't, I
absolutely
don't know why
agree.
that is. I don't know if that can be changed or why does it have to be so serious when you're supposed to be helping someone?
I think it's systemic change that needs to be led from the top down, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Everything needs to be looked at. The
yeah,
way people are treated when they do sort of reach out and seek help, or admit that they need a bit of relief from the exposure that they're
mm,
dealing.
mm,
It's systemic. I believe it's going to take
yeah,
a strong leader at the top to
mm,
stand up and say this has to change.
mm, yeah, yeah. I think that's the only way really, and it'd be great, all these, like you said, young graduates coming in. And I think over time, it's a shame we have to wait maybe until they're, superintendents or whatever, but it might take a little bit of time for them to kind of move through the system and go, okay, we've noticed this on our journey in digital forensics, and that's not right. People should feel like it's a safe place when they want to kind of open up and say, I've been feeling this, I've been feeling that. And it shouldn't be a case of, okay, maybe you're not fit for the job. And I think maybe a lot of people feel like, oh, you might not be the right person for it then because, we told you in the beginning, remember? That kind of that's how it is sometimes. And like I said, I
You,
really hope it's changed.
I mean, I've heard this saying so many times said to me from DFIs, and I've had it said to myself when I was working as a DFI, and I really detest it. You knew what you were signing up for.
It's yeah, I know. I don't like that phrase either. How can you
It's
be
the most
prepared for it, can you?
exactly. You've got no idea what you're
Mm,
signing up for.
mm,
How could just
mm,
ridiculous,
mm.
absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's the whole signing, looking at the small print thing, isn't it?
It
You read the
absolutely
small
is.
print, it's a bit like that, which I don't like either because, when you're, like I said, in a situation where you're trying to start a career and, do something meaningful and something that you think you'd be fantastic at. And then they go, oh, remember that bit we told you a long time ago? Remember? And it's not about that. It's about, okay, I did know, but I didn't expect to be left with just that wording and the rest is up to me, you know?
Yeah.
Mm,
Before we wrap up, one final question.
sure.
If you could influence policy, culture, or training, for example,
Yeah.
what would be the first thing you'd change?
Again, I think I mentioned it earlier, and I know resources will be stretched for this, but just let everybody have a mentor, someone they can turn to in confidence and when they start. And how that looks like, I'm not sure, but just a phone number or an email that you can just say, I saw this today. It really freaked me out. I just wanted to let you know you're free to speak for a minute. Just someone that can help like that, and just assign somebody or just maybe a welfare support person, assign some newbies, and they could get that help. And I think just knowing, even if they don't use that person, but knowing that someone's there when they join a new team and they haven't got anyone to talk to because they're new, they've got someone dedicated and they know they're going to call, and that's exactly what they're for. I think that would be great if that could happen globally.
I think that's a fantastic suggestion. I really
Mm,
do.
mm, yeah,
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking to Boomy from Sena Forensics tonight.
thank you.
I hope you enjoy this podcast. Sena, Boomy, thank you very
Of
much.
course, so much confusion. Sorry, it's senaforensics.com.
Thank you so much for joining tonight and sharing your experiences with
Oh,
us.
you're welcome.